I am Nathan, I'm 34 years old, and tonight, my own brother blocked me from entering my father's hospital room because he claimed I wasn't smart enough to understand what was happening. Before I tell you how the Dean of Medicine personally shut him down and revealed the secret I've been keeping for a decade, let me know where you guys are watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories reach. It started with a phone call that no one ever wants to receive. It was 11:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was still in my lab. Most people think science is white coats and bubbling beakers during the day, but the real work happens when the world is asleep. I was staring at a line of code that was about to change the way we treat cardiac arrest. My eyes were burning. My coffee was cold. The silence of the facility was the only company I had, and I liked it that way. Then my phone buzzed against the metal desk. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen pop up in months. Mom. I stared at it for a second. My mother didn't call to chat. She called when she needed something, or when something was wrong with Cameron, my older brother. I almost let it go to voicemail. I almost let the silence reclaim the room. But a knot tightened in my stomach, that primal instinct that tells you disaster is knocking. I slid the icon to answer. Nathan. Her voice was high, thin, cracking at the edges. I'm here, Mom. What's wrong? It's your father, she sobbed. The sound was jagged, terrifying. He collapsed. We're at Memorial Hospital. This is his heart, Nathan. They say it's bad. My blood ran cold. My dad and I weren't close, far from it, but he was still my father. I'm on my way, I said, already grabbing my keys. Is Cameron there? He's here, she said, her voice shifting instantly from panic to a strange sort of reverence. Thank God Cameron is here. He's talking to the doctors. He's taking charge. Just get here, Nathan. Even if there's nothing you can do. Even if there's nothing you can do. That stung. It was a subtle dig, a reminder of my place in the family hierarchy even in the middle of a crisis. Cameron was the savior. I was the spectator. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said and hung up. I didn't run to a beat-up sedan or take the bus, which is what my family assumed I did. I walked out to the private underground garage of the Biogen headquarters. Under the stark fluorescent lights sat my car. It was a Porsche 911 Turbo S, black on black. It looked like a shadow that had learned to move. I threw my bag in the passenger seat and slid behind the wheel. The leather groaned softly, a sound of luxury that my family had never heard associated with me. I punched the start button. The engine roared to life, a deep, guttural growl that echoed off the concrete walls. I didn't drive this car to family gatherings. I didn't drive it to Christmas dinner. To them, I was a freelancer scraping by, driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic I kept just for appearances. But tonight, there was no time for the masquerade. I tore out of the garage and hit the freeway. The speedometer climbed. 80, 90, 100. The city lights blurred into streaks of neon. My mind wasn't on the road. It was on the data. My dad had a history of hypertension. If he collapsed, it was likely a valve failure or a massive blockage. Memorial Hospital was good, but they were underfunded. I knew that because I had read their financial reports last month when my company was considering a grant. I pulled up to the emergency bay 19 minutes later. I parked the Porsche in the shadows of the parking structure, 2 levels up, away from the main entrance. I couldn't risk Cameron seeing it. Not now. I took a deep breath, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. Plain gray t-shirt, worn jeans, running shoes, and stepped out. I needed to look like Nathan the Dropout, not Nathan the CEO. The air in the ER smelled of antiseptic and old coffee. It was chaotic. Nurses were rushing past with clipboards, gurneys were rattling down the halls, and the low hum of anxious conversations filled the waiting area. I spotted them immediately. My mother was sitting on one of those uncomfortable plastic chairs, clutching her purse like a shield. Her face was pale, her eyes red. Standing over her was Cameron. Cameron looked like he had just stepped out of a medical drama catalog. He was wearing his white coat. Even though he didn't work at this hospital, he was a plastic surgeon at a private clinic across town. He had a stethoscope draped around his neck, likely just for show. He was gesturing wildly to a tired-looking nurse. I walked up to them. "Mom." She looked up, her eyes watery. "Oh, Nathan. You made it. How is he?" I asked, looking at the double doors of the trauma unit. Before she could answer, Cameron turned around. He looked me up and down, his lip curling in that familiar sneer. "He's critical, Nathan. Not that you'd understand the terminology." "Try me," I said, keeping my voice level. "What are his vitals? Is he stabilized?" Cameron let out a short, sharp laugh. "Vitals? You watch too much TV. Look, just sit down with Mom. Keep her company. I'm handling the medical side of things." "I want to see him," I said, stepping toward the doors. Cameron stepped in front of me, blocking my path. He was taller than me, broader, built like someone who spent more time at the gym than in the library. He put a hand on my chest. It wasn't a friendly gesture. It was a shove waiting to happen. "You can't go in there," Cameron hissed. "This is a sterile environment. They're working on him. Having you in there, looking confused and asking stupid questions, is only going to distract the professionals." "I'm his son," I said, my voice hardening. "I have a right to know what's going on." "You have the right to sit down and shut up," Cameron snapped. He turned to the nurse he had been harassing. "Excuse me, nurse? This is my brother. He has no medical background. He's a college dropout. Please make sure he doesn't try to enter the trauma room. I don't want him interfering with my father's care." The nurse, a tall man with tired eyes whose badge read Isaiah, charge nurse, looked at me. He looked at my t-shirt, my jeans, then back at Cameron's pristine white coat. "Sir," Isaiah said to me, his voice polite but firm, "I can't let unauthorized personnel into the trauma bay. It's hospital policy." "I just want to give you his medical history," I said, trying to bypass Cameron's ego. "He has an allergy to lidocaine, and he's on beta blockers for—" Cameron cut me off, laughing loudly. "Lidocaine? Beta blockers?" Listen to him. He probably Googled that on the way over. "Nurse, ignore him. I've already briefed the attending physician. I'm a surgeon. I know what I'm doing." I looked at my mother, pleading silently for her to intervene. "Mom, you know about the allergy. Tell them." Mom wiped her eyes with a tissue and looked at the floor. "Nathan, please," she whispered. "Cameron is a doctor. He knows best. Don't cause a scene. Your father is dying in there. Just sit down." Felt like a physical blow. It wasn't just that she took his side. It was that she assumed I was wrong. She assumed I was a liability. "See," Cameron smirked, crossing his arms. "Mom knows the score. Go find a vending machine, Nathan. Get yourself a soda. Leave the saving lives part to the people who actually finished their degrees." I clenched my fists at my sides. The urge to scream was overwhelming. I wanted to pull out my phone, show them my bank account, show them the patents with my name on them, show them that I employed 300 people who were smarter than Cameron could ever hope to be. But I didn't. Not yet, because shouting wouldn't save my dad. "Fine," I said, backing away. "I'll wait." Cameron turned his back on me, dismissing me as if I were a gnat. He leaned in to whisper something to the nurse, probably another instruction to keep the uneducated brother away. I walked over to the corner of the waiting room, but I didn't sit down. I pulled out my phone. I saw a message from Dr. Grayson, the Dean of Medicine at this hospital. System flagged a Robert Bennett admitted to Trauma 1. "Your father?" I typed back quickly. "Yes, it's bad. My brother is blocking me. I need to know the situation." 3 dots appeared instantly. Grayson was typing. "I'm in the building. Heading down. Sit tight." I leaned against the cold wall, watching Cameron perform his role of the grieving hero for the waiting room audience. He was pacing, rubbing his temples, looking distraught whenever a nurse walked by. It was a performance. I knew it. He didn't care about Dad. He cared about being the one in charge. The doors to the trauma unit burst open. A doctor in blue scrubs came out, looking grim. Cameron rushed forward. "Doctor? I'm Dr. Bennett, his son. What's the status?" The doctor pulled down his mask. He's in severe heart failure, Dr. Bennett. His mitral valve has completely collapsed. We've stabilized him for now, but his heart is too weak for conventional open-heart surgery. He won't survive the bypass machine. My mother let out a wail. Cameron paled. So what are the options? There's only one option, the doctor said. We need a ventricular assist device, but not the standard ones. His anatomy is irregular. He needs the heart-link system. My head snapped up. The heart-link, Cameron repeated, looking confused. I've heard of it, but that's experimental, isn't it? It's in late-stage clinical trials, the doctor said. It's the only device small enough and advanced enough to pump for him without open surgery. But getting one, he shook his head. We don't have them in stock. They are strictly controlled by the manufacturer, Biogen. Getting approval takes days. We have maybe 3 hours. 3 hours. Cameron looked at Mom, then at the doctor. I'll make some calls, he announced, puffing out his chest. I know people. I have connections at the medical board. I'll get that device. He pulled out his phone and started dialing, walking away to a quieter corner to look important. I stood there, watching him. I knew exactly who he was calling. He was calling his golf buddies. He was calling low-level administrators. He was calling people who couldn't authorize a pizza delivery, let alone a prototype medical device. I looked at the doctor. I looked at the closed doors. And then I looked at my phone. The heart-link system. My life's work. The device I had spent the last 5 years perfecting. The reason I slept in my lab. The reason I had dropped out of med school. I unlocked my phone and opened my secure messaging app. I scrolled to a contact named Julian Co. I typed 2 sentences. Code red. Memorial Hospital. I need a heart-link unit here in 20 minutes. I hit send. I didn't need to make calls. I didn't need to beg. I owned the supply chain. Cameron was across the room, shouting into his phone, pretending to yell at some imaginary bureaucrat. Do you know who I am? I need that device. I watched him and felt a cold, hard resolve settle in my chest. Tonight, the dropout was going to teach the doctor a lesson he would never forget. While Cameron paced the hallway, barking empty threats into his cell phone, I stood in the corner, watching the second hand on the wall clock tick. Every second was a beat of my father's failing heart. My mother was still weeping in the plastic chair. I wanted to go to her, to put my arm around her, but I knew what would happen. She would stiffen. She would ask why I wasn't doing something useful, like getting coffee for Cameron. It hadn't always been like this. Or maybe it had, and I was just too young to see it. My mind drifted back 10 years. The day the split happened. The day I became the black sheep. I was 24, 3 years into medical school. I was at the top of my class, but I was miserable. Not because the work was hard, it was too easy. It was too slow. We were memorizing textbooks from the 90s while technology was sprinting ahead. I had an idea for a biosynthetic valve that could adapt to a patient's blood flow. I showed it to my professors. They laughed. They told me to focus on passing my anatomy exams and stop dreaming. So I made a choice. I chose the future over the tradition. I chose the risk. I remembered the living room of my parents' house. The smell of lemon polish and disappointment. I had called a family meeting to tell them I was taking a leave of absence to start a biotech company with a grant I had won. "You're what?" my father had asked. His face turned a shade of purple I'd never seen before. He was sitting in his leather armchair, the throne from which he judged the world. "I'm pausing school, Dad," I said, clutching my business plan like a shield. "I have investors. This technology, it can save millions of lives. I can't do it while memorizing bone names for the 10th time." "You're quitting," Cameron said. He was sitting on the sofa, already a resident, already wearing his arrogance like a second skin. "He's quitting, Dad. He can't hack the pressure." "I'm not quitting," I argued. "I'm pivoting. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." "It's a mistake," Mom said, her voice trembling. "Nathan, we sacrificed so much for you to go to medical school. The tuition, the loans. That's the other thing, I said, feeling a lump in my throat. I need the rest of my college fund. The money Grandma left for my education. I can use it as seed capital. I'll pay it back with interest in 2 years. The room went deadly silent. My father looked at my mother. My mother looked at the floor. Cameron smirked and took a sip of his iced tea. There is no college fund, Dad said gruffly. I blinked. What? Grandma left $50,000 for each of us. Cameron got his. Cameron had expenses, Mom said quickly, defending him instantly. Medical school is expensive. And then, well, there was that accident. The accident. The night Cameron had totaled his car while driving drunk after a frat party. He had hit a parked car. No one was hurt, but the legal fees and the settlement to keep it off his record had been astronomical. You used my tuition money to pay for Cameron's DUI? I whispered. The betrayal felt like a knife twisting in my gut. We had to protect his future, Dad yelled, slamming his hand on the armrest. He was about to start his residency. A criminal record would have ruined him. You were just starting. We thought you could take out loans. We thought you'd understand. I understand, I said, my voice shaking. I understand that his reputation matters more than my future. Don't be dramatic, Cameron scoffed. If your little invention is so good, you don't need the money. But we both know it's a pipe dream. You're just lazy, Nathan. You always look for the easy way out. Get out, Dad said. He stood up and pointed to the door. If you drop out of school, you are no son of mine. I won't have a quitter in this house. Don't come back until you have a degree or a job. I left that night with a duffel bag and a broken heart. I slept in my car for 3 weeks. I ate ramen noodles and worked out of a garage that smelled like mold. I built the first prototype of the HeartLink with parts 1 scavenged from old medical equipment and code I wrote on a laptop held together by duct tape. For 10 years, they thought I was failing. I attended family gatherings, usually Christmas and Thanksgiving, because I was stupid enough to crave their approval. They put me at the kids' table, literally, until I was 28. Then they moved me to the folding table in the hallway. I listened to Cameron brag about his salary, his vacations in the Hamptons, his new Mercedes. I listened to Dad praise Cameron for being the rock of the family. I listened to Mom ask me if I was still fiddling with computers, and if I needed $20 for gas. I never took their money, and I never told them the truth. Why? Because I realized something early on. If I told them I was a billionaire, and yes, Biogen made me a billionaire by the time I was 30, they wouldn't love me. They would love my money. They would love what I could buy for Cameron. I wanted them to respect me, the guy in the t-shirt, the guy who worked hard. But they never did. Back in the hospital waiting room, the memory faded, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. Cameron walked back to us, shoving his phone into his pocket. He looked frustrated, sweaty. His confident mask was slipping. Well? Mom asked, looking up with hope. Did you reach them? Cameron sighed dramatically. I talked to the chief of surgery at St. Jude's. He made some calls. But Biogen, they're impossible. It's a closed loop. They said the approval process for the HeartLink takes a board vote. It's bureaucracy, Mom. It's red tape killing Dad. He was lying. I knew for a fact that the chief of surgery at St. Jude's was on a golf trip in Florida right now. Cameron probably just called his voicemail. So, there's no hope? Mom started to cry again. I'm doing everything I can, Cameron said, kneeling beside her and taking her hand. I'm going to try the senator's office next. But we need to prepare for the worst. I couldn't watch it anymore. You didn't call the chief of surgery, I said. Cameron's head snapped up. Excuse me? Dr. Henderson is in Boca Raton this week, I said calmly. I saw his Instagram post this morning. So who did you actually call, Cameron? Cameron stood up, his face flushing red. You stalking my colleagues now? You little creep. I called his deputy. Not that you'd know the difference. And you didn't call Biogen, I continued, stepping closer. Because if you called Biogen's emergency line, you would know that they don't require a board vote for emergency compassionate use. They require a simpler authorization. Oh, listen to him. Cameron threw his hands up, looking at Mom. The college dropout is lecturing me on medical protocols. Nathan, shut up. Seriously. You are embarrassing yourself and upsetting Mom. He's right, Nathan, Mom sobbed. Stop attacking your brother. He's trying to save your father. What are you doing? Standing there with your hands in your pockets. I'm doing more than you think, I muttered. My phone buzzed. A text from Julian. ETA 8 minutes. We have police escort. Convoy is inbound. I checked the time. My dad didn't have much time left. I'm going to get some water, I said, turning away. I needed to be near the entrance when Julian arrived. I needed to intercept the team before Cameron tried to claim credit for a miracle he didn't perform. Yeah, go, Cameron sneered at my back. Go get a soda. Maybe check if they're hiring janitors while you're at it. You could finally contribute something to the family. I walked down the hallway, the sound of his laughter following me. I reached the sliding glass doors of the ER entrance and stepped out into the night air. It was cool, crisp. I looked down the street. In the distance, I saw flashing blue lights. They were coming. And for the first time in 10 years, the hierarchy of the Bennett family was about to be shattered. The flashing lights grew brighter, cutting through the darkness of the hospital driveway. It wasn't just an ambulance. It was a spectacle. 2 police motorcycles led the way, their sirens chirping to clear the non-existent traffic of the midnight hour. Behind them was a matte black Mercedes Sprinter van. It didn't look like a medical transport. It looked like something out of a special ops movie. On the side, in glossy black lettering that was almost invisible against the paint, was the Biogen logo. My logo. I stood by the curb, hands in my pockets, watching my creation arrive. Inside the waiting room behind me, the chaos of my father's dying heart was unfolding. But out here, everything was precise, efficient. The convoy screeched to a halt right in front of the emergency entrance. The back doors of the van flew open. 2 men in tactical gear jumped out, Biogen security. They weren't there to fight. They were there to protect the intellectual property inside that van. The HeartLink prototype was worth about $2 million, and there were competitors who would kill to get a look at the schematics. Then Julian stepped out. Julian was my chief operating officer. He was 50, impeccably dressed in a bespoke Italian suit even at midnight, with silver hair and the demeanor of a statesman. He held a silver briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. He scanned the entrance. His eyes locked onto me. I gave him a subtle nod, a microscopic movement that told him, I'm here, but stay the course. Julian nodded back and turned to the hospital security guards who were rushing over, looking confused and alarmed. Biogen medical delivery, Julian announced, his voice projecting clearly. Priority 1 authorization for patient Robert Bennett. Clear a path. I turned and walked back into the ER, timing my re-entry to match the commotion. When I got back to the waiting area, the atmosphere had shifted from sorrow to confusion. Everyone was looking toward the entrance. What is going on? Mom asked, wiping her eyes. Cameron was standing by the window, peering through the blinds. Police escort, he muttered. Black van. Looks like government or something. Then the double doors swung open. Julian marched in, flanked by the 2 security guards and followed by a team of Biogen technicians pushing a specialized cart. The energy in the room changed instantly. The tired nurses sat up straighter. The sleepy residents blinked their eyes open. This was power walking through the door. Cameron saw the commotion and his eyes widened. He saw the equipment. He saw the urgency. And his ego immediately connected the dots in the wrong order. That's it, Cameron whispered, a grin spreading across his face. He turned to Mom. That's the device. I told you my calls would work. Oh, Cameron, Mom gasped, clutching her chest. You did it. You saved him. I stood by the vending machine watching this farce play out. It was almost impressive how quickly Cameron appropriated the success. He didn't even know what the van looked like 10 seconds ago. And now he was the architect of its arrival. Cameron adjusted his white coat, smoothed his hair, and strode toward Julian like a conquering general. "Over here," Cameron called out, waving his hand. "I'm Dr. Bennett. I'm the one who coordinated this." Julian stopped. He looked at Cameron with a mixture of polite confusion and professional disdain. The security guards didn't even blink. "Dr. Bennett?" Julian asked, his voice cool. "Yes, Robert Bennett is my father," Cameron said, extending a hand. "I assume you're here from the supplier? Good timing. I was just on the phone with the senator's office, pushing for this. I'm glad you guys finally got the green light." Julian didn't shake his hand. He looked past Cameron, scanning the room again. "He was looking for me. I stayed in the shadows." "Not yet, Julian. Let him dig the hole deeper." "We are here with the HeartLink unit," Julian said, addressing the room generally but keeping his eyes moving. "But we are not here because of a senator. We are here because the chairman authorized a code red deployment." "The chairman?" Cameron laughed nervously. Right. Well, whoever signed the paper, I'll be sure to send a thank you note. Now hand over the device. I need to get this to the trauma team." Cameron reached for the silver briefcase handcuffed to Julian's wrist. One of the security guards stepped forward, blocking Cameron with a wall of muscle. "Whoa," Cameron said, backing up, hands raised. "Easy there, Rambo. I'm a doctor." "This device is proprietary technology," Julian said smoothly. "It requires biometric activation by the authorized licensee. Cannot be handed over to unauthorized personnel." "I am unauthorized?" Cameron spluttered. "I'm the patient's son. I'm a surgeon. Are you certified in Biogen Class 4 cybernetics?" Julian asked. "Well, no, but then you are unauthorized," Julian stated. He turned to the charge nurse, Isaiah, who had come out from behind the desk. "Nurse, take us to the patient. We need to prep the interface immediately." "Right this way," Isaiah said, looking awestruck. As they moved toward the trauma doors, Cameron scrambled to keep up, looking like a puppy that had been kicked but was still trying to follow its master. "Wait, I'm coming too," Cameron shouted. "Mom, stay here. I'll make sure they install it correctly." I watched them disappear through the swinging doors. My mother was beaming, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Did you see that, Nathan?" she asked me, her voice filled with pride. "Look at your brother. He commanded that whole room. Even those government agents had to listen to him." "They aren't government agents, Mom," I said tiredly. "They're corporate security. Whatever they are, Cameron got them here," she snapped. "You should be thanking him. He just saved your father's life while you were—" "What?" "Buying a Snickers bar." She gestured to the vending machine I was standing next to. I felt a flash of anger so hot it almost blinded me. "I didn't buy anything," I said. "I was waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For a handout." She shook her head. "You know, Nathan, times like this really show character. Your brother is a man of action. You're just a spectator in your own life." A spectator. The words echoed in my head. I thought about the nights I spent coding until my fingers cramped. The risks I took. The ridicule I endured. All to be called a spectator by the woman who gave birth to me. "I'm going to check on Dad," I said, walking toward the trauma doors. "Nathan, no." She stood up. "Cameron said to stay out. You'll just get in the way." I ignored her. I pushed through the double doors. The hallway inside the trauma unit was bright and smelled of ozone and blood. I saw the team gathered outside Trauma Room 1. Julian was there, the briefcase on a sterile table. The Biogen technicians were unpacking the cart. The attending ER doctor was talking rapidly with Julian. Cameron was hovering on the periphery, trying to look involved. "So, the incision needs to be subcostal," Cameron was saying to no one in particular. "That's how I would do it." "Sir, please step back," a technician said without looking up. I walked up to the group. "Nathan," Cameron hissed when he saw me. "What the hell are you doing back here?" "Mom. I told Mom to keep you out." "I need to be here," I said. "Get out," Cameron growled, grabbing my arm. You are embarrassing me. These are top-tier professionals. They don't want to drop out breathing their air. Actually, Julian's voice cut through the noise. He turned around. He looked at Cameron holding my arm. His eyes narrowed. Is there a problem? Julian asked. My brother, Cameron said, tightening his grip. He's a bit slow. Just trying to usher him out so you guys can work. Julian looked at me. I saw the question in his eyes. Do I fire him? Do I end him right now? I shook my head slightly. Focus on the patient. We need to start, the attending doctor said urgently. His pressure is dropping. Where is the activation key? Julian looked at the briefcase. The device is biolocked. It requires the thumbprint of the chief donor or the CEO. Well, get them on the phone, Cameron yelled. Fax a thumbprint. Do something. It doesn't work like that, Julian said. It has to be a live scan. So we're screwed. Cameron threw his hands up. You brought a locked device? What kind of incompetence is this? My father is dying because you forgot the key. We didn't forget the key, Julian said, his voice calm, dangerously low. Then where is it? Cameron screamed. The doors at the end of the hallway swung open again. This time it wasn't a technician. It was Dr. Grayson, the Dean of Medicine. He was a tall man in his 60s, with silver glasses and an air of absolute authority. He was wearing a suit, not scrubs. He had clearly come from his office upstairs. What is the holdup? Grayson demanded, his voice booming. Dean Grayson. Cameron rushed over, abandoning his position by the cart. Thank God. These people, these incompetent corporate hacks, brought a locked device. They say they need a thumbprint from their CEO. Can you override it? Use your authority. Grayson looked at Cameron, then at the device, then at Julian. Dr. Bennett, Grayson said to Cameron. You are a plastic surgeon, correct? Yes, but... Then you are out of your depth, Grayson said coldly. He turned to the group. We cannot override the biogen encryption. It's military grade. We need the chief donor. He's not here, Cameron cried. We need to call him. Grayson looked around the circle. His eyes landed on me. I was standing near the wall, trying to stay out of the physical way of the nurses. Grayson's face softened. He walked right past Cameron. He walked right past the attending doctor. He walked straight to me. Nathan, Grayson said warmly, extending his hand. I got your message. Thank you for coming so quickly. Cameron froze. The attending doctor froze. Dean Grayson, I said, shaking his hand. It's been a while. Too long, Grayson said. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. Cameron laughed. A high-pitched, hysterical sound. Wait, you know him? Dean Grayson, this is my brother. He's nobody. He's the uneducated one. Grayson turned slowly to face Cameron. The look on his face could have frozen lava. Uneducated, Grayson repeated. Young man. Nathan here was the brightest student I ever had the privilege of teaching before he left to pursue bigger things. Teaching? Cameron blinked. But he dropped out. He didn't drop out because he couldn't hack it, Grayson said. He dropped out because he outgrew us. Grayson turned back to the room. We can't start the surgery without the chief donor, which is him. He pointed a finger directly at me. Nathan, Cameron whispered. Donor. Julian stepped forward, unlocking the handcuff from his wrist. He placed the briefcase on the table in front of me. Mr. Chairman, Julian said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The device is ready for your authorization. I stepped forward. The nurses parted like the Red Sea. I walked up to the silver case. I looked at Cameron. His mouth was hanging open. His eyes were darting from me to the case to Julian. Nathan, he said again, his voice trembling. What is going on? I didn't answer him. I placed my right thumb on the scanner pad on top of the briefcase. A green light swept across the metal. Beep. Identity confirmed. Nathan Bennett, CEO/founder Biogen. The briefcase clicked and hissed as the hydraulic seals released. The lid popped open. revealing the gleaming titanium heart pump sitting in a bed of blue velvet. "Get him prepped," I said to the attending doctor. "I want full telemetry on my phone. And I want Dr. Grayson overseeing the procedure." "Yes, sir," the doctor said, looking at me with wide eyes. "Wait," Cameron stammered, grabbing my shoulder. "CEO? Biogen? You fix computers. You drive a Honda." I shrugged his hand off my shoulder. I brushed the spot where he touched me, as if wiping away dirt. "I drive a Porsche, Cameron," I said softly. "And I don't fix computers. I invent the future." I turned to Julian. "Set up the remote monitor in the VIP viewing room. I want to watch the surgery." "Yes, Nathan," Julian said. "And Julian?" I added. "Sir." "My brother stays in the hallway," I said. "He's not authorized." I turned and walked toward the scrub room, leaving Cameron standing there, the sound of the heart monitor beeping in sync with the shattering of his entire world. The transition from the chaotic hallway to the VIP viewing deck was like stepping from a war zone into a sanctuary. The viewing deck was a glass-walled room overlooking the operating theater. It was quiet, soundproof, and smelled of lemon water and expensive leather. I sat in the ergonomic chair, looking down through the glass. Below, the team was moving with precision. They had cracked my father's chest. The red gore of surgery was usually disturbing to people, but to me it was mechanics. It was a problem being solved. Dr. Grayson stood beside me. "It's a marvel, Nathan," he said softly, watching the surgeons insert the heart-link device. "The size, the efficiency. You really did it." "It had to be done," I said, my eyes glued to the monitor showing Dad's vitals. The old pumps were barbaric. They shredded blood cells. "Your family," Grayson hesitated. "They don't know. They know what they want to know," I said. "They see a dropout, so they treat me like a dropout." It was easier not to correct them. "Until tonight," Grayson noted. "Until tonight," I agreed. Down in the hallway, the scene was very different. I could see through the security feed on the side monitor. Cameron was pacing like a caged animal. He was arguing with Isaiah, the charge nurse. "I am his son," Cameron was yelling, though the sound was muted. "I demand to be in there. My brother is lying. He's a fraud. He probably stole that briefcase." Isaiah, bless him, wasn't having it. He stood with his arms crossed, backed up by one of the Biogen security guards. Then I saw my mother. She had been allowed into the hallway. She was clutching Cameron's arm, looking terrified and confused. She kept pointing at the doors, then at Cameron, asking questions I couldn't hear but could guess. "What does he mean, CEO? Is it true? Why is he inside and we are out here?" Cameron pushed her away. He looked furious. He pulled out his phone and started making calls again, probably trying to find dirt on me, trying to find a way to regain control. I looked back at the surgery. The surgeon was connecting the outflow graft. "Connection secure." The audio feed crackled. "Activating the heart link." I held my breath. This was the moment of truth. Theoretical physics meeting biological reality. On the monitor, the flat line of the pump's flow rate spiked. Whir. A steady, rhythmic wave appeared. "Flow is stable," the surgeon announced. "Blood pressure normalizing. 120/80. Oxygen saturation rising. It's working. My God, it's working beautifully." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My shoulders slumped. He was going to live. "Congratulations, Nathan," Grayson said, patting my shoulder. "You just saved him." "Yeah," I said, feeling a strange emptiness. "I did." I stood up. "I'm going down." "To the waiting room?" Grayson asked. "To the hallway," I said. "I have some things to clear up." I walked out of the VIP suite and took the elevator down one floor. When the elevator doors opened, the atmosphere in the hallway snapped tight. Cameron saw me first. He marched over, his face purple. "You!" he shouted, pointing a finger in my face. "What kind of sick game is this? You hire some actors? You rent a van? You think this is funny?" "Cameron," Mom said, hurrying after him. Stop it. Just ask him. Ask him what? Cameron spat. He's a fraud, Mom. He's playing pretend. There is no way, that the kid who couldn't even finish Anatomy 101 is the CEO of a billion-dollar company. I stepped out of the elevator. I didn't shout. I didn't raise my hands. I just walked toward them. The security guard stepped aside for me. Dad is stable, I said to Mom. The surgery was a success. The device is working. Mom let out a sob of relief. Oh, thank God. Thank God. No thanks to him, Cameron yelled. I'm the one who stabilized him initially. I'm the one who… Cameron, stop, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it had the weight of authority now. Just stop lying. For 5 minutes. Can you do that? Lying? Cameron laughed, looking around for support from the nurses, but they were all looking at him with disgust. I'm a surgeon. You're a cosmetic surgeon, I said. And you're currently under investigation for malpractice at your clinic, aren't you? The color drained from Cameron's face. What did you say? I did a background check on the way here, I lied. I actually had Julian do it while I was in the VIP room. You've been sued 3 times in the last year. You're broke, Cameron. That Mercedes is 3 months behind on payments. You're pushing Dad to sell his house so you can manage the funds, right? That's why you're here tonight. Not to save him. To secure your inheritance. Liar! Cameron screamed, lunging at me. The Biogen security guard moved faster than a striking cobra. He caught Cameron by the wrist and twisted it behind his back, pinning him against the wall. Get off me! Cameron howled. Mom! Help! Mom looked at me, her eyes wide with horror. Nathan? Is that true? I looked at her. Ask him about the investment he lost last month. Ask him about the college fund you stole from me to save his career. Did that save him, Mom? Or did it just teach him that he can do whatever he wants and you'll pay the bill? Mom covered her mouth. She looked at Cameron, pinned against the wall, looking pathetic and small. Nathan, she whispered. We didn't know. We thought you were. You thought I was a loser, I said. Because I didn't follow your script. You never asked me what I was building. You never asked me who I was. You just saw what you wanted to see. We are family, she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. We make mistakes, but we love you. Do you? I asked. Or do you love the idea of a family where Cameron is the prince and I'm the servant? Before she could answer, the trauma doors opened. The surgeon came out. Family of Robert Bennett? Here, Mom said, turning away from me. He's awake, the surgeon said. He's groggy, but he's asking for… Well, he's asking for the doctor who saved him. Cameron struggled against the guard. That's me. Let me go. I need to see my father. The surgeon looked at Cameron, then at me. Actually, the surgeon said. He's asking for Nathan. The silence that followed the surgeon's words was heavier than lead. He's asking for Nathan. Cameron stopped struggling against the guard. He went limp, sliding slightly down the wall, his face a mask of pure shock. Mom looked from the surgeon to me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Me? I asked, my voice cracking slightly. I hadn't expected that. I expected Dad to wake up and ask for Cameron. That was the script. That was always the script. Yes, sir, the surgeon said respectfully. He heard us talking during the prep. Well, Dr. Grayson might have mentioned who the donor was before the anesthesia took full effect. I took a deep breath. Okay, I'll go in. I'm coming too, Mom said, stepping forward. He's my husband. I looked at the surgeon. He nodded. Family is allowed, but keep it brief. No stress. Let him go, I said to the security guard holding Cameron. The guard released Cameron. My brother rubbed his wrist, glaring at me with a mix of hatred and fear. He straightened his coat, trying to regain some shred of dignity. I'm coming, Cameron muttered. I need to check his incision. I didn't stop him. I wanted him to see. We walked into the recovery room. It was dim, lit only by the glowing monitors. The rhythmic whoosh click of the HeartLink device was the only sound. Dad was lying in the bed, looking smaller than I remembered. His skin was pale, papery. Tubes ran in and out of him, but his eyes were open. They drifted past Mom. They drifted past Cameron. They landed on me. "Nathan," he rasped. His voice was weak, stripped of its usual booming authority. I walked to the bedside. "I'm here, Dad. They told me," he whispered. "A machine, your machine." "Yes," I said. "It's a maglev pump. It's beating for you right now." Dad closed his eyes for a second, then opened them. He looked at Cameron, who was hovering at the foot of the bed. "Cameron," Dad said. "I'm here, Dad," Cameron said quickly, stepping up. "I made sure they followed protocol. I was supervising the whole." "Shut up," Dad wheezed. Cameron froze. "What? Shut up?" Dad repeated, struggling for breath. "I heard the nurses talking. You tried to block him." "I was protecting you," Cameron argued, his voice rising in panic. "He's not a doctor. I didn't know he had some secret gadget." "You blocked my son," Dad said, each word a labor. He looked back at me. There was something in his eyes I had never seen before. Not love exactly, but respect. Or maybe fear. "You built this?" Dad asked me. "Yes," I said. "You're rich?" he asked. I almost laughed. Of course. That was the question. Not are you happy, not are you proud, but are you rich? "Yes, Dad," I said. "I'm very wealthy." "Why didn't you say?" Mom asked from the other side of the bed, clutching his hand. "Why did you let us treat you like that?" "I didn't let you do anything," I said coldly. "You chose to treat me like that. You chose to believe that a degree was the only measure of worth. You chose to steal my college fund. You chose to sit me at the kids' table. We were doing what we thought was best." Mom cried. "We wanted to motivate you." "No," I said. "You wanted to hide me, because I didn't fit the picture." Dad tried to sit up, wincing in pain. "Nathan, the money, the medical bills. This must cost a fortune." "It does," I said. "The surgery and the device cost about $300,000. Cameron gasped. Mom turned pale. "But don't worry," I said. "I paid it." Relief washed over their faces. I saw it. The tension left Dad's shoulders. Mom squeezed his hand. They thought everything was back to normal. The check was signed. The problem was solved. "Thank you, son," Dad said, breathing easier. "You're a good boy. We have a lot to talk about. About the business. Cameron is struggling with the clinic. Maybe you can invest? Help your brother out? Keep it in the family?" I stared at him. Couldn't believe it. He had almost died 10 minutes ago. I had just saved his life. And his first instinct was to use me to prop up Cameron again. It was a sickness. And I was the cure, but not in the way they thought. "No," I said. The word hung in the air. "What?" Dad asked, confused. I said no, I repeated firmly. "I paid for the surgery, Dad. That was my act of charity. That was me paying you back for the roof you put over my head as a kid. We are even." "Even?" Mom asked, her voice trembling. "Nathan, we are family. You can't just—" "I can," I said. "I'm not investing in Cameron's clinic. In fact, if I were you, Cameron, I'd start looking for a good lawyer. Because once the medical board sees the report Dr. Grayson is filing about your conduct tonight, trying to interfere with a life-saving procedure, you won't have a license to practice anywhere." Cameron's knees buckled. He grabbed the bed rail for support. You wouldn't." "I don't have to," I said. "Grayson is doing it because he cares about medicine. Something you never did." I looked at Dad. "I saved your life, Dad, but I'm not going to save your lifestyle. And I'm not going to save his." I pointed at Cameron. "Nathan, please," Mom begged, reaching for my hand. Don't be cruel. We can start over. We can have dinner on Sunday. Just us. We'll set a place for you. At the head of the table. I looked at her hand. Her manicured nails. The diamond ring Dad had bought her with his bonus the same year they told me there was no money for my school. I don't want the head of the table, Mom, I said softly. I have my own table now. I turned to walk away. Nathan, Dad called out, his voice weak but desperate. If you walk out, don't come back. It was the same threat he had used 10 years ago. It was the only weapon he had left. I stopped at the door. I looked back at them. A dying patriarch, a desperate mother, and a fraud of a brother. Okay, I said, and I walked out. This is the moment that changed everything. When I finally took control back. I realized that you can't buy respect from people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Thank you for listening this far. You guys are amazing. Please help me out by liking this video and commenting the number 1 below if you're with me. It helps more people find this story, and it tells me that I'm not alone in this. Your support means the world to me. Now, let me tell you what happened next, because it wasn't quite over yet. Walking out of that recovery room felt like taking off a backpack filled with bricks that I had been carrying for a decade. I stepped back into the hallway. The air felt cleaner. Julian was waiting for me by the nurse's station. He had packed up the silver briefcase. He looked at me, scanning my face for signs of regret. Is it done, sir? He asked. It's done, I said. The device is performing within expected parameters. The patient is stable. And the family dynamic? Julian asked, raising an eyebrow. Terminal, I said. I pulled the plug. Julian nodded. He understood. He handed me a tablet. The hospital administration has the paperwork. I listed you as the emergency contact for medical decisions only. Financial responsibility is capped at the procedure cost. Any aftercare, private rooms, or special requests will be billed to the patient directly. Perfect, I said. Let's go. As we walked down the corridor toward the exit, I passed the waiting room again. It was empty now except for a few sleeping strangers. The plastic chair where my mother had sat, where she had told me to leave, looked cheap and sad under the fluorescent lights. We stepped out into the night. The Biogen convoy was still there, engines idling. The police escort had left, their job done. Do you want a ride, sir? Julian asked, gesturing to the Sprinter van. We can take you back to HQ. No, I said. I have my car. I walked toward the parking structure. I climbed the stairs to the second level. My Porsche was sitting there in the shadows, gleaming. I got in. The smell of leather surrounded me again. But this time, I didn't feel like I was putting on a costume. I felt like I was stepping back into my real skin. I started the engine. The rumble was deep and reassuring. I drove to the exit gate. As I paid the parking fee, I saw Cameron running out of the ER entrance. He was looking wildly around the parking lot. He spotted my car, the distinct silhouette of the 911 Turbo S pulling out of the shadows. He stopped dead in his tracks. I rolled down the window as I pulled up to the curb near him. Not to talk, just to let him see. He looked at the car. He looked at me. His mouth hung open. He looked at the rims, the badge, the sheer expensive reality of it. It was worth more than his life's earnings. Nathan, he shouted, taking a step forward. Wait, we need to talk. About the clinic. About the lawsuit. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him one last time. I saw a man who had spent his whole life climbing a ladder, only to realize he had leaned it against the wrong wall. I put the car in gear. I hit the gas. The Porsche launched forward. 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds. I left him there, standing in a cloud of exhaust and regret. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I drove back to the lab. It was 3 a.m. now. The city was asleep, but I felt wide awake. I walked back into my office. My coffee was definitely cold now. I picked up the cup and poured it into the sink. I sat down at my desk. The line of code was still there on the screen, blinking. The cursor waited for me. The future. I started typing. I had saved my father's heart. But more importantly, I had saved my own. 3 days. That was how long I waited before I went back. I didn't go back because I missed them. I didn't go back because I wanted a hug. I went back because I am a businessman, and in business you always close the loop. You always finalize the contract, even if the other party has defaulted on every moral obligation they ever owed you. During those 3 days, my phone had been a constant source of noise. 17 missed calls from Mom, 5 from Dad, 0 from Cameron. The voicemails were a masterclass in gaslighting. They ranged from "we're so worried about you" to "we need to discuss the logistics of the discharge," and finally, the classic, "we're family, Nathan, stop punishing us." Punishing them? I was sitting in my glass-walled office overlooking the skyline, finally breathing freely for the first time in my life. Silence wasn't punishment. It was peace. But I had to go back. I had signed a temporary financial guarantee for the HeartLink procedure, but the long-term care, the rehab, and the private room they had inevitably upgraded to, that paperwork needed a signature. And I had one final delivery to make. I drove the Porsche back to Memorial Hospital on a Friday morning. The sun was shining, a stark contrast to the midnight gloom of my last visit. When I pulled up to the valet, the attendant didn't look through me this time. He looked at the car, then at me, and scrambled to open the door. "Welcome back, Mr. Bennett," he said, practically bowing. "Dean Grayson left instructions. Any parking fees are waived." I tossed him a $50 bill anyway. "Keep it close," I said. Walking through the hospital lobby felt like walking into a different dimension. The last time I was here, I was the invisible man, the nuisance in the t-shirt. Now, heads turned. I saw a group of nurses by the station, the same station where Cameron had loudly proclaimed my incompetence. Stop their conversation and watch me pass. "That's him," I heard one whisper. "The CEO. The one who invented the heart thing." I didn't stop. I walked straight to the elevators and hit the button for the cardiac ICU. When I reached Dad's room, the door was open. I could hear voices inside. Happy voices. The kind of performative happiness people put on when they think everything is back to normal. "And then we'll convert the den into a recovery suite for you, Robert," Mom was saying. "Cameron says you need southern exposure for the best healing." "I can supervise the home care nurses," Cameron's voice chimed in. It lacked its usual arrogance, sounding thinner, more desperate, but he was still trying to captain the ship. "I'll make sure they follow the protocols." I stepped into the doorway. The conversation died instantly. Dad was sitting up in bed, looking significantly better. The color had returned to his cheeks. He was eating hospital jello like it was a steak dinner. Mom was fussing with his pillows. Cameron was sitting in the visitor's chair, wearing a suit that looked like he had slept in it. "Nathan," Dad said. His voice was stronger now. He put down his spoon. "You came. I'm here to sign the discharge papers," I said, staying by the door. I didn't step fully into the room. It was a boundary I had set in my mind. "Come in. Come in." Mom waved her hand, her smile tight and anxious. "Don't stand there like a stranger. Look at your father. It's a miracle. A true miracle." "It's technology, Mom," I corrected her. "Not a miracle." "Well, whatever it is, we are grateful," she said. She walked over and tried to hug me. I didn't hug back. I stood stiff as a board until she pulled away, looking hurt. "Nathan," Dad said, clearing his throat. "Sit down. We need to talk. About everything." I remained standing. "I don't have much time, Dad. I have a board meeting at 2. "This is more important than a board meeting," Dad said, his old authoritarian tone trying to surface, but failing. "This is your family. We've been doing a lot of thinking, your mother and I." "Have you?" I asked. "Yes," Dad nodded. "We realize we may have underestimated your career. We didn't understand what you were doing with those computers. But now that we know, well, we want to be part of it. We're proud of you, son." Proud. The word felt like ash. They were proud of the result. They were proud of the status. They weren't proud of the 10 years of struggle it took to get here. "And," Dad continued, looking at Cameron, We think it's time to bury the hatchet. Your brother, he's in a tough spot, Nathan. Cameron looked down at his shoes. He looked defeated, but I knew better. A snake doesn't stop being a snake just because it's shedding its skin. What kind of tough spot? I asked, playing along. The clinic, Cameron mumbled. The lawsuit you mentioned. The one you found during your background check. It's complicated. They're freezing my assets. I can't access my accounts. And, I pushed. And Dad's medical bills are going to be astronomical, Cameron said, looking up, his eyes pleading. The rehab alone is $10,000 a month. The medication, the follow-up scans. Mom and Dad, they don't have that kind of liquidity. Their retirement is tied up in the house. So you're asking for money, I stated flatly. We're asking for help, Mom interjected softly. You have so much, Nathan. We saw the news. We looked up your company. You're worth millions. We just need a bridge. A loan. To get through this patch. A loan, I repeated. Like the college fund? Was that a loan? Dad flinched. That's in the past, Nathan. Why do you keep bringing up old scores? We are talking about survival right now. I'm glad you brought up survival, I said. I reached into my leather messenger bag. Because I brought something for you. It's not a check, but it will help you survive. I pulled out a thick manila envelope. It wasn't the discharge papers. I tossed it onto the bed, right onto Dad's lap. It landed with a heavy thud. What's this? Dad asked, picking it up with trembling hands. Open it, I said. Dad opened the clasp and slid out the stack of documents. He adjusted his glasses. Mom leaned over his shoulder. Cameron watched from his chair, a look of growing dread on his face. This is a bank statement? Dad squinted. From Cameron's clinic? Keep reading, I said. Dad flipped the page. Then another. His face went gray. I don't understand, Dad whispered. Transfers to offshore holdings? Withdrawals for online gambling? $200,000. That's not his money, Dad, I explained, my voice calm and clinical. That's money from the clinic's operating budget. But look at the next page. That's the one that really matters. Dad turned the page. He gasped. This is your mother's retirement account, Dad said, looking at Cameron. Why is your name on a withdrawal slip for $50,000? The room went dead silent. The only sound was the air conditioning humming in the vent. Cameron stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. That's a mistake. That was an investment. I was managing their portfolio. You forged her signature, Cameron, I said. I had my forensic accountants look at it yesterday. You drained their liquid savings 3 months ago. That's why you were so desperate for me to pay for the surgery. You knew the check would bounce if Mom tried to write it. Mom covered her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. She looked at her golden boy. Cameron, tell me it's not true. That money, that was for our long-term care. Cameron backed up against the wall. I was going to put it back. I had a sure thing. A crypto investment. It just crashed. I was going to double it for you guys. You gambled it, Dad roared. His voice was weak, but the anger was real. He threw the papers at Cameron. Papers flew everywhere, fluttering down like dead leaves. You stole from us? After everything we gave you. I didn't steal, Cameron shouted, tears streaming down his face. I borrowed it, because I had to keep up appearances. You guys expected me to be the rich doctor. You expected the Mercedes. You expected the expensive dinners. Where did you think the money came from? The clinic is failing. It's been failing for 2 years. So you robbed your parents, I said. And then you tried to block me from saving Dad's life because you were afraid I'd look at the financials. Cameron sank to the floor, burying his head in his hands. He was sobbing now, ugly, heaving sobs. Mom sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. Her world was crumbling. The narrative she had built for 30 years, Cameron the savior, Nathan the failure, had just been inverted. Dad looked at me. He looked old, defeated. Nathan, he whispered. I didn't know. I know you didn't, I said, because you never looked. You never checked his math because you loved the story he told you. And you never checked my math because you hated the story you thought I was telling. I walked over to the table and pulled out the actual discharge papers and the bill for the HeartLink procedure. Here is the reality, I said. I placed the bill on the bedside table. The total cost for the surgery, the device, and the ICU stay is $342,000. Mom let out a small whimper. I have paid it in full, I said. Dad looked up, tears in his eyes. Nathan, after he stole from us, you still paid? I paid it because I'm your son, I said. And because, unlike Cameron, I can afford to fix mistakes. I pulled out another document. This is a contract for home nursing care, I said. I have hired a top-tier service. They will come to the house 12 hours a day for the next 6 months to help you recover. It's already paid for. Thank you, Mom whispered. Oh, Nathan, thank you. However, I said, raising my voice slightly to cut through her gratitude, there are conditions. I pointed at Cameron, who was still huddled on the floor. Condition number 1. Cameron manages nothing. He doesn't touch your finances. He doesn't touch your medical decisions. He doesn't even pick up your prescriptions. If I find out he has access to a single penny of your money, I cancel the nursing service immediately. Dad nodded vigorously. Done. He's finished. Condition number 2, I continued. I am not your bank. I paid for this crisis. I will not pay for the next one. You need to sell the house, downsize, and live on what Social Security you have left. Do not call me for loans. We understand, Dad said humbly. And condition number 3, I said, taking a deep breath. This was the hardest one. I am going back to my life. I will not be coming to Christmas dinner. I will not be coming to Thanksgiving. I will check in with the nurses to make sure you're alive. But my personal involvement ends today. What? Mom stood up. Nathan, no. You can't do that. We just found you again. You didn't find me, Mom, I said, looking her in the eye. You found my wallet. You found my status. If I had walked in here today as a broke construction worker who just wanted to visit his dad, would you be begging me to come to Christmas? Or would you be telling me to get out of the way for Cameron? She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She knew the answer. We all did. That's what I thought, I said. I turned to Cameron. He was looking up at me, his eyes red and swollen. And you, I said. I spoke to Dean Grayson. He's filing a report with the medical board, but he's not pressing criminal charges for the interference in the ER. He's doing that as a favor to me. Cameron sniffled. Thank you. Don't thank me, I said coldly. I did it because Dad needs someone to fetch his water and change his sheets when the nurses aren't there. That's your job now, Cameron. You wanted to be the devoted son? Be him. You're going to live with them, you're going to care for them, and you're going to try to pay back every cent you stole. That is your residency now. I adjusted my jacket. I felt lighter. The air in the room felt heavy, suffocating, but it wasn't pressing on my chest anymore. Goodbye, Dad. Goodbye, Mom, I said. I walked to the door. Nathan, Dad called out one last time. I love you. I paused. I gripped the doorframe. I wanted to believe it. Maybe in his own broken way he meant it. But love without respect is just control. And I was done being controlled. I know you do, Dad, I said without turning around. You just love your version of me. And he doesn't exist anymore. I walked out into the hallway. I walked past the nurse's station. I walked to the elevator. I didn't look back. Part 8. Epilogue. The Architect of Life. Estimated word count. 2,400 words. 1 year later, the auditorium was packed. 3,000 people sat in the dark, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of the stage lights. I stood in the center of the stage, wearing a black t-shirt and jeans, my uniform. Behind me, a massive screen displayed the Biogen logo. I wasn't here to launch a product. I wasn't here to announce a merger. I was here to give the keynote address at the Global Medical Innovation Summit. Failure, I said into the microphone. My voice echoed through the hall. We are taught to fear it. We are taught that a straight line is the shortest distance to success. High school, college, degree, career. If you step off that line, you are lost. You are a dropout. You are a mistake. I paused, looking out at the sea of faces. Students, doctors, investors. I was a mistake, I continued. For 10 years, the people who were supposed to believe in me the most saw me as a cautionary tale. But here is the truth. The straight line is a lie. Innovation doesn't happen on the straight line. It happens in the margins. It happens in the detours. It happens when you are alone in a garage at 3 a.m. because you believe in something no one else can see. I clicked the clicker in my hand. The screen changed. It showed a photo of the HeartLink device. This device has saved 5,000 lives in the last year, I said. It was built by a dropout. It was built by a disappointment. Applause rippled through the room, growing into a roar. I waited for it to die down. Today, I am announcing the Bennett Grant, I said. The screen changed again, showing the new scholarship program. But this isn't for the students with the 4.0 GPAs. This isn't for the valedictorians. This grant is for the disruptors. The ones who ask why not, instead of how. The ones who don't fit in. We are putting $50 million into finding the next generation of failures and giving them the tools to change the world. The crowd went wild. As I walked off stage, Julian was waiting for me in the wings. He handed me a bottle of water. Good speech, boss, he said. Twitter is already trending. Hashtag the Bennett way. Thanks, Julian, I said, taking a sip. Any updates on the other matter? Julian nodded. He pulled a tablet out of his bag. The monthly report from the private investigator. You asked to see it. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say no. Part of me wanted to leave that door closed forever. But curiosity is a scientist's vice. I took the tablet. There was a photo, taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. It showed a small, rundown ranch house in the suburbs. The lawn was overgrown. On the porch, an old man sat in a wheelchair, staring blankly at the street. It was Dad. He looked frail, much older than his years. Standing next to him was a man in a stained polo shirt, smoking a cigarette. He looked exhausted. His hair was thinning, his belly spilling over his belt. He was holding a spoon, trying to feed the old man. It was Cameron. I zoomed in on Cameron's face. The arrogance was gone. The doctor's ego was gone. In its place was a profound, hollow resignation. He looked like a man serving a life sentence. He lost his license permanently, Julian narrated softly. The medical board review was brutal. He's working part-time as a medical equipment sales rep, entry-level, but he spends most of his time caring for your parents. Your mother, she's showing signs of early dementia. He's dealing with that too. And the house? I asked. They sold the big house to pay back the debts Cameron accrued, Julian said. They are solvent barely. The nursing service you paid for covers the heavy lifting, but Cameron does the nights. He's exactly where you told him he would be. I looked at the photo for a long time. There was no joy in seeing it. No rush of victory. Just a quiet, somber acknowledgement of gravity. They had created a world where image was everything, and now they were trapped in a reality where image meant nothing. Do they ask about me? I asked. Your mother writes letters, Julian said. We intercept them as per your protocol. Do you want to read them? I shook my head. No. File them. I handed the tablet back to Julian. Let's go. We have work to do. We walked out of the venue to the loading dock. My car was waiting. Not the Porsche today. Today I was taking the helicopter. We had a meeting in Tokyo in 12 hours. As the helicopter lifted off, rising above the city, I looked down at the grid of streets. Somewhere down there, in a small house with peeling paint, my family was eating dinner. Maybe they were talking about the past. Maybe they were watching me on the news. I realized then that I didn't hate them anymore. Hate takes energy. Hate is a connection. I felt nothing but a distant pity, like looking at a faded photograph of people you once knew. I looked at the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the sky in gold and violet. I thought about the kid who slept in his car. I thought about the kid who was told he was worthless. I put my hand on my chest. I could feel my own heart beating, steady, strong, unbroken. I wasn't a dropout. I wasn't a victim. I was Nathan Bennett, and I had finally graduated. This story isn't just about a medical device or a billion-dollar company. It's about the labels people put on us and the labels we accept. My family labeled me uneducated because I didn't follow their specific path. They labeled Cameron successful because he looked the part. But labels are just stickers. They don't change what's inside the jar. The biggest lesson I learned, and the one I want you to take away, is that you cannot buy respect from people who profit from your insecurity. If someone only loves you when you fit in their box, that's not love. That's possession. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to fight for your seat at their table, but to build your own table and eat alone until the right people show up. Breaking toxic family cycles is the hardest surgery you will ever perform. It hurts. It leaves scars. But just like my father's heart, sometimes you have to bypass the damaged parts to keep the system alive. Your turn. I want to hear from you. Have you ever been the black sheep who turned out to be the shepherd? Or have you had to make the tough choice to cut off toxic family members to save your own mental health? If you enjoyed this journey and took value from these lessons, please do me a favor. Comment the word good below. It's a small gesture, but it tells me that these stories matter to you. Or if you have a specific moment that hit home, share it. I read every single comment. Thank you for listening. Keep building, keep striving, and never let anyone else hold the pen that writes your life story.